We start with a point. Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Imagining the 10th Dimension video blog. Rob Bryanton here, and today's entry has kind of a fun title: Monkeys Love Metallica. Sometimes we talk about ideas that seem to contradict each other with this project. In a number of entries like Jumping Jesus, Evolution's Fast Lane, and The Stream, we've looked at mounting evidence that we're in a constantly accelerating meme space, where ideas are connecting together more and more quickly, and the amount of information that each of us is asked to process on a daily basis is constantly increasing. In Placebos Becoming More Effective, we talked about an editorial the New York Times published called Old Fogies at 20. This article suggests that university-age students are seeing a generation gap between them and their high school-age siblings. Particularly in the world of technology and the internet, trends and expectations are changing so quickly now. It can be hard to perceive an acceleration when you're within a system where everything is accelerating, but we do catch glimpses. So on the one hand, we talk about the stream, the singularity, transhumanism, artificial intuition, conscious computers, and so on. On the other hand, we talk about time being an illusion, and parts of each of us being connected to patterns that exist well outside the limits of the now of our 4D spacetime. How do the two ideas fit together? First of all, let's look at some recent examples of these big picture patterns. We've talked a few times about the deep underlying connections of sacred geometry and how the golden ratio has been considered a thing of beauty for thousands of years. Like fractals, shapes and patterns such as these occur naturally, and perhaps that's why we're so attracted to them, because they represent deeper connections to reality that are outside the limits of our observed spacetime. Now here's a Science Daily article that extends this idea even further. It suggests that scientists have now discovered evidence of the golden ratio in the quantum world. And I'll put up a link to that article if you want to read it. Music and sound also seem to connect us together in powerful ways that speak to a more timeless perspective. In The Big Bang and the Big O, I referred back to sections in my book where I discuss how certain sounds seem to reach us at a primal level. Could the dreaded chalkboard squeal connect us to genetic memories of some ancient flying predator who swooped down from the sky making a similar sound? Now there's a great TED Talks video featuring sound consultant Julian Treasure. It's called The 4 Ways Sound Affects Us, and I'll put up a link to that one. It speaks very effectively to the idea that we are all connected together by the ways we react to sound. That's a 5-minute video. Do watch it. It's great. Julian is the chair of the Sound Agency, a firm that advises worldwide businesses, offices, retailers, hotels, on how to use sound and music more effectively. And this leads us to the title of this entry, Monkeys Love Metallica. Okay, I admit it, love is overstating the case for dramatic effect, but here's a link to a New York Times article that my friend Pete Kema of the band 10 Feet Deep sent to me a while back, and I'll provide the link to that article. It's called Music for Monkeys. The Guardian UK also published a related article this past September that goes into more detail about this research, and we'll put up a link to that one. Scientists create music that helps monkeys chill out. Both articles are linked to a study published this past September in the Royal Society journal Biology Letters that, to quote from the Guardian article, will help psychologists understand the evolutionary roots of music and its effect on the brain, the author said. The emotional components of music and animal calls might be very similar, and from an evolutionary perspective, we are finding that the note patterns, dissonance, and timings are important for communicating affective states in both animals and people, said Chuck Snowden, a psychologist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Now, what Dr. Snowden is talking about here seems to be easily connected to ideas we've talked about in entries like the geometry of music and disorders of the mind. Music, like the other patterns we've just looked at, connects in ways that go beyond the limits of our 4D spacetime. But at first glance, the results of Dr. Snowden's study seem to contradict the ideas he tells us he was exploring. In the study, 14 cotton-top tamarins were played clips of music while the researchers noted any changes in behavior. Pieces included Samuel Barber's Adagio for strings, a soft piano piece from The Fragile by 9 Inch Nails, Metallica's Of Wolf and Man, and Tool's The Grudge. Now, according to the Guardian article, the monkeys didn't exhibit any clear response to these pieces of music one way or another, except for the Metallica song, which had the unexpected effect of calming them down. Interestingly, the New York Times article claims the scientists saw a similar soothing effect on the monkeys with the Tool song, but most of the other articles I found reporting on this study appear to only single out Metallica. Frankly, I have to suspect that most reporters covering this story grabbed onto the monkeys like Metallica angle because it makes for a more memorable story. Unfortunately, singling out Metallica from Tool does create some misperceptions here, though. The monkeys did not respond one way or another to the other piece of music. Does this mean that farmers who play classical music to their cows to keep them calm might be kidding themselves? Shouldn't Adagio for strings have made these monkeys sad? If animals are part of the same continuum that we are, shouldn't they respond in ways similar to we humans to the joy, the sorrow, the anger, the range of human emotions that we can hear in a powerful piece of music? Perhaps what we're talking about here is more related to this accelerating generation gap. Are our more subtle responses to music mainly cultural, mainly a learned behavior? In the same way that a young child might now expect that all viewing screens are multi-touch displays, perhaps our varying emotional responses to the music of the last 400 years or so is something we've been trained into through repetition. The key here is understanding that the monkeys responded to the highly rhythmic music of Tool and Metallica and didn't respond to the long phrases and more free tempos of the other two pieces. What's the common denominator between the development of music? Repeating structures, the drum, patterns that can entrain the heartbeat and breath, that make a creature feel a certain way when they move along with the music. Adagio for strings, then, is just too subtle for our monkey friends to hear as a communication of emotion. This is a generation gap of a different magnitude, but similar nonetheless. But where this gets even more interesting is when Dr. Snowden brought in David Time, a cellist with the American National Symphony Orchestra, to create some pieces of music that were inspired by, but to be clear, not specifically based upon, the sounds these monkeys use to communicate each other. And I'm going to provide you with the sound of those samples right now. There are also links that we'll put to them if you want to listen to them separately. We'll put those links in the description box here. Okay, that was one piece of music he created. Now this second piece has melodic and rhythmic connections to the calls the tamarins produce when they're anxious or alarmed. Certainly, this music sounds odd to our ears, but the tamarins responded as you might expect. They lounged around and ate more when the first piece of music was playing, and became upset when the second piece played. Any film soundtrack composer exercises their creativity in plugging into these same underlying connections, finding ways to soothe us, or ways to upset us with the palette of sounds, the melodic shapes, and the rhythmic structures they choose. Clearly, Dr. Snowden would have to experiment with a much larger range of musical compositions that are generally agreed to communicate a variety of specific emotions to humans, and I'm certain that such experiments would help to reveal what is primal and what is learned in modern humans' reactions to music of all kinds. So, do monkeys love Metallica? Well, that's definitely a gross generalization, even if it's fun to use as a headline. But can monkeys respond emotionally to some kinds of music? This scientific study points to yes. Our next blog entry is going to be called Holograms and Quanta. That's all for now. My name is Rob Bryanton. Enjoy the journey.